Hey y'all, I'm Christy from Sew Lux, and on this episode, I'm going to show you how to make a zipper pouch using zipper tabs. Now, this is one of my favorite ways to install a zipper on a pouch because I really like the way that the corners pop out very nicely at the top. So follow along with me and I'll show you how I do it. So we're going to make a Candy Cutie pouch, and this is one of my favorites to make. You just need a mini charm, a zipper, some soft and stable, and then a fat eighth of lining. We're going to start by sorting out our mini charms. And we're going to need a couple different stacks. We need 2 different stacks. I usually just go through the mini charm, and especially if there's duplicate prints, just kind of separate them into 2 different stacks and try to keep them pretty even. And this way I can just distribute the colors. Now that I have my squares all sorted, I'm gonna lay out the panels, and I'm gonna sew the squares together in rows and then join the rows to complete the panel. So follow the pattern for those details. So I'm gonna go ahead and then press my panel, and I press all the seams in one direction typically for this project. I don't normally worry about pressing them open or nesting them since none of the seams intersect in that way. And so if you want to press open, you're welcome to, but I find that for this project it's not necessary. I will say that I do typically press in an up and down manner as opposed to really manhandling my piecing by using a side to side motion. You'll see here that I kind of finger press the seam a little bit and then hit it with an iron to help keep my piecing accurate. So I have both of my panels ready, and I'm going to place these on top of soft and stable, and then I will use a basting spray to hold everything in place. You can certainly use pins if you'd like to, but I find that I just prefer quilting smaller things like this with a spray based holding everything in place. So one of my favorite ways to quilt these panels is to just use a normal straight stitch foot and just sew some wavy organic lines across the pouch. I'll use lines going in both directions and overlap them, and it's really easy to do, especially if you're a beginner to free motion quilting or just quilting in general, and it's very forgiving because lines don't have to be straight. So we're gonna go ahead and trim our Candy Cutie. And I usually trim mine a little bit big at first, just so that I can make adjustments if I need to. You'll want to follow the directions in the Candy Cutie pattern for what size to trim these pieces to. Okay, so now these are ready for us to mark and trim. Be sure to reference the Candy Cutie pattern for how to mark and trim these panels. You'll also trim the lining in the same manner. To make a zipper tab, I start with a 2-inch square. I'll fold that in half and press it well. And then I will fold the raw edges into the center crease and press that well also. Then I'm gonna take my zipper, I'm gonna cut off the end of it, and I'll place that inside the zipper tab and sew that in place. Once I've sewn the zipper tab in place, I will trim the edges even with the zipper tape. Then what I'll do is I'll measure the length of the zipper that I need it to be. So I usually start with the measurement of the top width of the pouch and then subtract 1 inch. And that's the total length that I would like the zipper section to be. And so I'm gonna mark the zipper tape so that I would have a 1/2 inch overhang, as you can see here. I'm gonna move the zipper pull so I don't cut it off because I don't wanna have to put it back on. And then I'm gonna cut the tape at the mark and add another zipper tab at that end. So the next thing we're going to do is install the zipper, and I'm going to place the zipper face down on top of the right side of the pouch panel. I'm going to clip it in place. I like to use clover clips here. If you're new to installing zippers, you can also use basting tape, which is like a double-sided sticky tape. And at this point, if you're new, you would probably want to go ahead and baste that in place. I'm pretty comfortable with zippers, and so I'm going to go ahead and just do all that in one step. And I'm putting the lining on now and just clipping that in place, being very careful not to move my zipper tape. And then I'm going to take that to the sewing machine. When I'm sewing the zipper, I do like to backstitch at the beginning and the end, and I prefer to sew with my soft and stable on top, and I find that this keeps my lining from shifting a whole lot. You'll see here that I felt that I was close to that zipper pull, and so I'm gonna stop and then lift up the fabric and move the zipper pull out of the way. So I'm gonna move it behind where I've already sewn, and then I'm just gonna keep sewing until I get to the end. So you can see here that I've installed one side of the zipper with the lining and the exterior of that side of the pouch. And what I like to do next is to press that. You can either do that at the iron or finger press. I tend to finger press. Again, I'm comfortable sewing zippers and pouches. And then what I'll do is just top stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam, just to keep the layers nice and neat on the inside. Notice that I'm going to move that zipper pull out of the way so that I can continue stitching a straight line. And then we're going to repeat that whole process with the other panel and the opposite edge of the zipper. Now that the zipper is fully installed, we're going to go ahead and put the pouch right sides together. So the two exterior pieces will be together, and then the lining will be right side together. And we're gonna clip this in place, and we'll start at the seam where the zipper is. And so we're gonna make sure that that is lined up nicely, and we'll pin all sides of the pouch. It's really important that you've left the zipper open before you begin sewing. We're gonna sew down each side, beginning with the long sides, and you're gonna backstitch at the beginning and the end because we'll be pinching the corners, and we don't want those seams to pop open as we're manipulating the bag later. You're gonna be careful as you go over the area where the zipper is. You're not gonna be stitching through the zipper or the zipper tab. We left that 1/2 inch there to give us a little bit of room. And so you should be next to it, but not touching the zipper or zipper tab. Once you've sewn both sides, you're going to sew up the bottom of the exterior. And so you'll do the same thing you did before. You're going to backstitch at the beginning and the end, and sew the whole length of the bottom of the pouch closed. And then we're going to close the bottom of the lining. The important thing to remember here is you're going to backstitch, and then you're going to stop a few inches in so that you can leave about 3 inches of a hole in the center of the bottom part of the lining so that you can turn the pouch right side out later on. And so you'll see me start here and sew to the end, backstitching both times so that nothing pops open. One of the last steps we need to do is to box the corners, and so we're going to pinch the bottom and side seams together and pin that in place. And you'll see me sort of manipulate this to make sure that the fabric is staying with the edge of the soft and stable here. You're going to just manipulate the pouch out of the way so that you can sew these seams, being sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, we're almost finished. We're gonna turn the bag right side out, and that hole that we left in the bottom lining is definitely important here. So we're gonna shove that through carefully, being careful not to pop any stitches. It just takes a little bit of patience, and you'll be able to pull that through. So once you get the bag turned right side out, just use your fingers to pop that zipper tab up so that it's flat with the top of the bag. You'll see that it's not actually sewn into that side seam at all. It's just right next to it so that the corners will be nice and square. Then you're gonna just manipulate those bottom corners of the bag, the lining and the exterior, just push those corners out so they're nice and neat. And we're so close. The last thing to do is just close up the lining, and I usually do this by machine, but you're also welcome to slip stitch that by hand if you prefer. I'd usually just do a 1/8, like a top stitch right next to the edge there to close that up, being sure to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so the final step is to put that lining back inside. You can use an iron to press the bag into shape if you need to, but otherwise it's ready to go. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you'll like and follow our YouTube channel, we would love that. Thanks so much.